Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
Oh, I had to do commentary on this. So, good old Roddy, the person that filmed Ahmaud getting killed by the father and brother gun-toting duo, he had a rather interesting interview with his lawyer that pretty much consisted of him being drug for filth on national TV by his own counsel. This was pretty entertaining. You have to see it for yourself.
What we don't understand really is why this happened and why it was on video in the first place. So let's bring in the man who knows the answer. William Bryan, along with his attorney, Kevin Goff. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Good
evening.
All right. Mr. Bryan, you are known as Roddy to friends, correct?
This interview was rich. From the very first question. So, your friends call you Roddy, huh?
That's right.
And in the police report, the McMichaels referred to a Roddy. I'm assuming that was you, yes?
Okay. Talk about a smooth setup. And then they had the screenshot ready of the police report where it said, and then Roddy, da-da-da-da-da. So you're the Roddy that they're talking about?
Hey, hold on, Chris. You've been a prosecutor, and you can imagine that this prosecutor that's been in this case 24 hours, she's going to start throwing stuff around her living room if you start doing her job for her, okay? Because as good as you are, she'd probably rather do it herself. Do you know what we could talk about without causing problems for anybody? And I know you're trying, but this man cannot be answering substantive questions about the case.
And then his lawyer comes in, who Mr. and I are questioning if he really is supposed to be practicing. And he's like, cannot answer that question. Well, he already did.
And if you feel that we've misled you in some way, I'm sorry.
No. It's not about misleading. It's about just being clear for the audience. Okay. I always believe that the best opportunity the media can give you is the opportunity to tell the truth in a way that helps you. That's all I'm saying. I don't know why you would dispute the notion of the man's presence at the situation, but that's fine.
And my client is a mechanic with a high school education, and if you've ever been to the high schools around here, that's not necessarily saying much.
You see, what I need you to all understand is that my client is an epsilon. He is a semi-moron. He is stupid. A simple man.
Okay? And I don't mind if the Board of Education doesn't like it. You know, I'm not their friend either, okay? But
all right. Mr. Goff, do you think that your client should be understood as part of the altercation that day?
No, sir. No, sir. Not at all.
Because
my client has done nothing wrong here. He's committed no crime, and this is a horrible tragedy. This young man has lost his life, and you've seen the video. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's horrifying to watch. It's painful to watch, even for a former prosecutor like yourself, and I'm sure you've seen lots of grisly incidents. So this is a terrible matter, and some people are going to have to answer for what they did, but my client is not responsible for that. My client was unarmed. My client hasn't shot anybody. My client hasn't been in so much as a fist fight since he was in high school. And you can take a look at him. He's 5'6", 5'7". This is not a gentleman who's out there looking for a fight.
He's also a coward and rather weak. He would never look for a fight. He's far too dumb and far too weak and far too small and piddly of a man to do so.
Now, the McMichaels seem to know him, but I want to give you a chance, Counselor. The fact that the McMichaels know Roddy or that Roddy knows them, why is it wrong to suggest, therefore, he knew about their intentions that day?
There is no relationship whatsoever between Roddy and the McMichaels. And with all due respect, while I'm not at liberty to go into all the details, but I don't think it's any secret that the relationship between Roddy's fiance and the district attorney's office here, it's utterly absurd to think that she would ever have any dealings with these people.
Why do you think somebody might take a pot shot at your client?
Because certain people out there, for reasons that are not clear, are deliberately putting all kinds of misinformation out there to the extent, and I can't speak for the GBI, but I'm sure that however well-intentioned, that is hindering and hampering and impeding their investigation.
Like what?
There's so much distraction. The people out there that are talking about my client being some kind of vigilante, they're conjuring up conspiracy theories that don't exist, saying that my client was armed. Everyone knows he wasn't armed. That's never been an issue from day one. And, you know, why people would continue to put things out like that, to suggest that somehow he's in cahoots with whatever's been going on up on the third floor at the courthouse with the DAs. Look, Greg McMichael worked for the DA's office for many years, and he was a Glenn County police officer before that. My client does not have quote-unquote strong ties to law enforcement. He doesn't have ties to law enforcement.
I got you.
And since he's been in this relationship with this young lady, I can assure you that whether he realized it or not, he had no friends up at the courthouse.
All right.
And all this conversation and these letters and this legal analysis, while his name may have come up in it, nobody up there, with all due respect, gives a darn whether he lives or dies.
And do you know what else? The police office here, they don't care about him. Doesn't matter that he was banking that chick that works for them. They don't care if he lives or dies.
You just don't understand, Chris. I mean,
That's why I'm
things
talking
about
to you.
how bad it is down here.
Well,
okay?
First of all, I am
This
not
is the district
condemning.
attorney's office
I'm not
that
condemning
is-
an area. I don't understand why no arrest was made. I don't understand why someone who recused themselves from the case went out of their way to paint a false picture of the victim. But these are not questions for you to answer. But I don't want to impugn the character of a community or of the police force other than to state curiosity at their inaction. And that's why this interview was so important. If it weren't for your client's tape, I don't know that anything would have happened here. And is that something, let me go back to Mr.
I think you're right.
Hold on. Let me go back to Mr. Bryan on that. Mr. Bryan, I hope you understand that your decision to videotape this may be what makes all the difference in the administration of justice in this case. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir. If there wasn't a tape, then we wouldn't know what happened.
And how do
Or
you feel
y'all
about
wouldn't.
that?
I would.
Let me move on. And you, Counselor, should weigh in whenever you feel like it. So, Mr. Bryan, how did you come to be in the car videotaping that day?
Okay, we're not going there.
You don't want to talk about that either. All right, so let's do this. You are afraid of the facts of this case, Counselor. Why?
Sir, I'm not afraid of anything. And I'm certainly not, with all due respect,
Sure.
I'm not afraid of you, but
What do you want them to understand about why your client was where he was if it is not true that it was done in coordination with the McMichaels?
Chris, I don't think it's any secret. My client lives in that neighborhood. He's at his house, minding his own business, and I'm trying not to complicate anybody else's job. He's at his house, minding his own business, and things happen, and in a matter of minutes, his life has been changed forever. And this family, the Arbery's, their lives have been changed forever. But the Arbery's will never be able to spend another Mother's Day with their son. So you know, for them, it's hard to imagine anything worse that could have happened.
I'll get back to the fact pattern before we end, but let me ask you a couple of side questions because of your your apparent perspective on this place. What is your reservation again for your client doing what he is eminently capable of doing, saying why he was where he was, why he videotaped as he did, and what he understands happened that day? Why do you not want him to say what can only help clear his name?
Because, Chris, in America, as I believe you're well aware, we try our cases in courts of law. And this thing where we've come to in this country over the years, where important cases are being tried in newspapers and on television and on blogs and stuff, that is not serving the interests of justice.
But he's not on trial. He's not going to be on trial, is he?
He doesn't control anything. He is a pawn in a much larger game. And he has no say-so in that.
But he is a witness, and we have witnesses on
there
all the time, so the American people can understand maybe that there is a miscarriage of justice, because the facts as they're being evinced from people who were on the ground, who saw and heard and experienced, give a different picture than what they're getting from authorities. They can be very helpful.
And when you feel that you are not being treated right, you should speak out. And if people won't listen to you, you need to speak out further. Okay. And that's exactly what happened in this case. This family wanted justice. And I'm not commenting on the McMichaels. That's not my place, okay? And they've got rights, and they're presumed innocent too. But they spoke out. They wanted justice. They weren't treated right. And they kept talking, and nobody was listening. And I know some of the people who were trying to help them, and nobody was listening.
Is your client one of them? Was he one of the people trying to help? Is your client one of the people who was trying to help the Arbery's?
Was he trying to help that black dude? Yo, can we say that? Can we? That would be a good defense, but you might never be able to go home again. You can't say that you're trying to help a black dude. We cannot say if he was trying to be helpful by filming that black man get killed. That boy was definitely in the wrong neighborhood.
So just to be clear as we end this interview, your statement, Mr. Goff, on behalf of William Bryan, also known as Roddy, is he wasn't working with the McMichaels, he wasn't called to the scene by the McMichaels, and he wasn't videoing in any way to help the McMichaels. Is that all true from your perspective?
He wasn't there for the McMichaels at all. I can say that. And he doesn't have any relationship with the McMichaels.
And the one sticking point that I've heard you try to explain before, but hasn't met satisfaction with me yet, is when you see something that you know is wrong, even though you're videotaping it in the moment, even though things happened before the videotaping that he didn't videotape, you call the police. I don't care about his education. Everybody knows that. You can be in high school. I've met many people, and so have you in high school, who will eat our lunch despite all our education intellectually. Why didn't he call 911?
Well, first of all, he can't use the phone for a phone call while
I know,
he's
but you can hang up and call 911. You can stop
you can.
videotaping and call 911.
Okay.
That's an easy answer.
Chris,
yes,
Chris, with all due respect.
Please.
With all, feel free to give the answer for me, okay? If you're asking me my answer,
yes,
I can tell you that in the real world, things are much different. It's one thing to watch it on TV. It's another thing to do it in real life. And
calling 911?
He's not a young man. But
what's the difference?
I hope we all know how to call 911.
But what I'm saying is, what point are you
question
trying to
that
make?
911.
Right now, I'm videotaping you. I think it's
My
very
point
important.
to
I
you
decide to stop because
and
now I'm
Chris,
going to call 911. I
if
call
you-
911. What's so complicated, Mr. Goff?
Wow, you guys. This was the most bizarre interview I have ever seen. Yeah, this may be the least I've talked during a reaction or commentary ever, but the comic relief that this offered to this very serious situation. I mean, clearly, let me try to pull myself together. Clearly, this man was filming for them. He was probably filming because they needed it to not be called into question what happened. one of the men, the father, was an ex-police officer. So he probably knew what he needed to do to be able to get away with the behavior that he was engaging in. He definitely knew that he was going into a situation where things would likely go wrong. It seems like he definitely knew that. So he wanted somebody filming. And honestly, I think the neighbor was filming for him. They obviously were acquainted. This neighborhood was close enough that they could pinpoint somebody who didn't belong, right? So the neighborhood is close. He called Roddy by his pet name. And so yeah, I just feel like he was an accessory